Welcome to From Chaos to Code, Rebuilding the Iron Mind, where we talk about the real side of men's health. Not the Instagram highlight reel, not the fake stoicism, but the honest effects that happen when life hits you harder than any workout ever could. I'm your host, Ricardo, and I've lived a few different lives. Teacher, property manager, MMA promoter, garage mechanic, handyman, empath. I've been the man everyone leans on, the one who fixes things. Until the weight of it all almost broke me. Here, we want to talk about what that really costs. When being the strong one becomes survival instead of strength. How burnout, silence, and pride slowly eat away at you until you realize you've built armor so thick that you can't even breathe under it. This isn't about weakness, it's about rebuilding. Learning that real strength isn't about how much you can carry. It's about knowing when to set it down. So let's start there, with the cost of being the strong one and what it actually takes to reclaim your iron mind. And welcome back to From Chaos to Code. Today we're going to talk about the weight of independence, balance, rest, and the myth of doing more. I felt it appropriate if I recorded this one today at 7 p.m. at night, and I am just able to settle down. All day I've been, all over the place trying to find something to do. I haven't been able to sit still. I've been restless. I helped some family members, rode the bike, washed it, that sort of stuff, but honestly, it took me all day to be able to feel productive, so to speak. So I know a lot of us feel this way, and that's why I want to talk about this idea of being hyper independent and how the hell do we find balance in our lives. I want to talk about that restless quiet that I've been feeling. And think of it yourself. I mean, do you ever feel guilty when you're not doing something? Like if you're not moving, fixing, or producing, something in you starts to itch. Now, for men who've lived in motion a long time, stillness can feel like danger. We get addicted to the motion because motion feels like control. Now, that's the season I'm in. My work's on strike or lockout or whatever vernacular you want to use. So my schedule is lighter than it's ever been, and I'm forcing myself to rest. It doesn't come easy. I'll sit down. 10 minutes later, I'm scrolling my phone. I'm building something, cleaning things that don't need to be cleaning or that don't need cleaning. I'm inventing problems just so I can fix them around the house. Now, somewhere along the way, I learned that rest had to be earned, and that stillness meant I was falling behind. And here's what I've been learning the hard way. It's a process. Rest isn't weakness. It's work of a different kind. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm slipping up for sure. Ever since I've been on strike, I'm scrolling and trolling when it comes to online strike talk. I'm way more engaged with that than I'd like. I'm crushing Zins like they're oxygen. Constantly checking my social media and messages for some kind of communication, but not necessarily the fulfilling kind. My sleep is absolutely destroyed. I'm sleeping at bizarre times, short durations. But I have to be kind to myself. I'm also doing a lot of things right, where a lot of people would normally collapse. Now, my sleep schedule might be fucked, but I'm napping to make it up. So I make sure I'm getting my usual deep sleep time. Thank you, Samsung Watch. My diet is on point. I'm lean as hell. Almost like the summer cut without the fatigue. I'm still stretching, I'm active, I'm taking care of my physical body. I make sure every day I speak to my family, my friends, my coworkers, and I'll see them throughout the week. I've stayed the hell away from dating apps. I do not need that right now. And I know I would just be pursuing people for validation or to fill time instead of that idea of genuine connection. By the way, we'll talk about that in a future podcast. When a flirtation is genuine connection or is it validation? But after all these things that I'm doing, I'm still tense. So today, you're here with me as I sit in that tension. That idea of independence versus isolation, rest versus avoidance, and how to be still without feeling lost. So let's talk about the productivity trap when doing becomes hiding. Because sometimes productivity isn't ambition, it's avoidance. We stay busy because silence brings up what we've buried. We used to chase that grind like a badge. We're not teenagers in an old Civic running around all night anymore. Now we're racing our own burnout, telling ourselves that busy means valuable. Now, of course, I've looked up some psychologists to be able to discuss for this podcast. As usual, I will put the APA format references at the end for YouTube for those of you that are interested in looking into their work further. Now, psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan talk about this in self-determination theory. So they said that there's intrinsic motivation, things like purpose, curiosity, meaning, and there's controlled motivation, guilt, fear, proving you're enough. Now, when it comes to controlled motivation, you can look effective, but you don't feel peaceful. Tension gets mistaken for drive. Exhaustion gets mistaken for progress. Now, neuroscience adds another layer. Andrew Huberman, my boy, explains our dopamine system rewards pursuit more than completion. And that's why we finish a task and instantly look for the next one. Now, if we never downshift, the brain adapts. It needs more chase to feel the same reward. And achievement turns into addiction. Don't get me wrong, the fix isn't no dopamine. It's healthy chasing. You need to set clear bouts of effort. For example, 60 to 90 minutes being fully focused, then some sort of intentional recovery. Go take a walk, deep breathe, no phone. The pattern should be effort, recover, repeat. That rhythm keeps the system responsive instead of burnt out. Now, this grind culture is just Instagram bullshit. It's not sustainable. I've worked so hard that I was working 16-hour days. I was shaving in the kitchen while I cooked just to look moderately alive. Now you add in sleep loss and that whole machine shakes. Sleep scientist Matthew Walker shows that a week of 6-hour nights cuts your brain's top-down emotional control roughly in half. Now in real life it looks like this. You start snapping at the people you love. You misread neutral faces as threats. Your cravings go up, whatever they might be. Your patience goes down. Your testosterone dips. Cortisol, that stress hormone, climbs. And one more task becomes your drug of choice. You're not weak. I've said it time and time again. You're not weak. You're just dysregulated. Rest isn't laziness. It's a neurological reset. If you never let the system cool down, you can't tell whether you're truly driven or just running scared. So let's talk about these ideas of independence and connection, because we need to be able to find the middle ground. Now, I've been told many a time that I'm too independent. Sometimes it's a compliment. Sometimes it's a warning. And I've even had it used against me as manipulation. Independence can be confidence, but it can also be a shield. A shield against disappointment, betrayal, or relying on people who didn't show up when you needed them. Bessel calls that hyper-independence, and I referred to this in my last podcast. Now, hyper-independence is a defense you build when you learn early that help isn't coming. Let's face it, there's that whole idea of masculinity, and you truly become a man when you realize no one is coming to save you, but it's something that we learn early on. Maybe a parent was never home. Maybe a coach punished weakness, or maybe your environment made vulnerability dangerous. So then your adaptation becomes simple. You stop asking. You build walls, and you mistakenly call these walls boundaries. Real independence is different. It's capacity. You can stand alone, plus choice. You connect when it matters. So that's called interdependence. You're whole by yourself, stronger together. I'm thinking of the whole apes together strong from Planet of the Apes, but I can't think of a better motion for it. Now, together doesn't mean everybody. It means your circle. Other men who live by a code, who have seen things, and still choose discipline over destruction, especially self-destruction. Now, around these like-minded men, your nervous system settles. So in this context, safe doesn't mean soft. It means you can breathe. You don't have to perform or defend. You can just be. Now, a lot of us learned this hyper-independence because of cultural and family roots. So let's talk about why we learned it this way. A lot of us didn't choose independence. It was assigned. Maybe you had working parents doing double shifts, and that meant you raised yourself between dinner and midnight. Maybe you had to be able to take care of your siblings because your parents were always gone. Or maybe one parent was completely gone and you became that adult early on. So some learned independence through love that was busy, others through love that was missing. Think of our fathers, our uncles, our mentors. Many worked until they broke. They called it pride. And for those of us from immigrant families, the message was loud. We sacrifice so you can have options. Now, they didn't have the luxury of rest, so we feel guilty taking this rest. But that mindset has to change. We need to honor their sacrifice, not by recreating their exhaustion. We honor it by becoming the generation that can work hard and live well. So we inherited survival habits. Survival is doing anything to get through the day. Living, on the other hand, is being present enough to experience it. You can eat a meal slowly. You can laugh without feeling a guilt. Sleep without that dread. You're okay with quiet. And you don't mistake peace for boredom. So masculinity isn't measured by isolation. It's not being on this island by yourself. Masculinity is measured by integrity under pressure and connection under control. So now we need to redefine what rest is. We need to think of rest without guilt. Now, if you're someone who's lived on adrenaline, rest feels wrong. The guilt shows up fast, and guilt might wear numerous disguises. Might be that restlessness, like where you have to justify every minute. Irritation when plans slow, or when something doesn't go the way you want. And that inner voice of, you haven't earned this yet. You haven't earned rest. Think of it this way, though. Physically, rest is the foundation for everything. It's the foundation for your focus, for your hormones, for your recovery, for your patience. Now, Matthew Walker calls sleep the Swiss Army knife of health. One short night can drop testosterone 10 to 15%. It can spike cortisol, slow reaction time, magnifying reactivity. Over time, emotional control and immunity take hits. When I was coming off roids after many, many years and my whole entire body just crashed, I saw this amazing nutritionist and trainer, absolute witch doctor. But she told me that sleep deprivation did more damage to me than years of steroid abuse ever did. She wasn't joking, it's true. Now, my boy Huberman, he also talks about deep rest and non-sleep downtime. So you don't just need to think that rest is eyes closed, passed out. It can also be awake, but off duty. Think of quiet breath work, eyes closed resting. Sitting outside with no phone. Light stretching, or even mindful showering. That means not getting in there, getting out. Take your time, relax. These states trigger repair networks that restore focus, self-control, and creativity. You don't always need a nap. You need off-switch reps. Think of it like the gym. Now, of course, where our phones wreck this is simple. Every scroll is a little micro hit of dopamine. I don't care what you're scrolling. I don't care if you think it's being productive. You never truly come down. So if you're on your phone, even your day off feels wired. Here's a practical boundary that you can use. Pick a nightly cutoff. No work, no social feeds, no just one more email. Do this 90 minutes before bed. I used to work in the computer until it was time to go to bed, jump into bed out of absolute exhaustion, pass out for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then bam, my mind was absolutely awake because I hadn't had any downtime. I was sleeping out of exhaustion, but it still needs that wind down process. Wind down process is easy. Dim the lights, stay away from the blue light of your phone. Take a warm shower. If you're going to read, which is a dying trend, but it helps, read a paper book. Don't grab your Kindle or your phone. If you have a partner around, have some easy conversation. The goal is to land the plane, not circle the runway. Now, keep in mind, we've talked about healthy boundaries before, and you might need to set boundaries with a spouse to achieve this. You might need to say, hey, no hard conversations close to bed. But for those of you with newborn or young children, sorry, you're kind of hooped for a bit. Well, those kids aren't as reasonable as a spouse might be. So think of it like this, and this is what I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Rest isn't reward. It's repair. Guilt-free rest is earned discipline. This is part of your code. I'll say that again. Guilt-free rest is earned discipline. You might actually have to schedule this. Maybe once a week, schedule an unstructured hour. No goals. You're not trying to achieve anything in that hour. No phone. Walk slow. Sit somewhere. Watch the world move without you as if you didn't exist at that moment. Let your brain idle a little bit so the gears don't seize. And this takes practice, trust me. But if it was easy, then it wouldn't be worth learning. I'll always come back to gym analogies because they're so accessible. It's like as you're in the gym, you're not growing while you're doing these reps. You grow between them. So that rest and that repair is the growth you need. And what you'll find that you have a balance eventually. You'll have some freedom through structure. And by freedom, I don't mean do whatever you want. Freedom is clarity. The ability to choose what's right. And what's right means it's aligned with your values, not your impulses or impulsive behavior. For example, that impulse could say scroll, distract, numb. The value says, call your brother. Write for 10 minutes. Train and then sleep. So one of those, the impulsive one, feels good now. The other, the value, your code, builds a man you're going to respect tomorrow. True independence gives you direction. Connection keeps you grounded. Rest keeps you capable. So true freedom sits somewhere between contribution and solitude. How you can show up for others and showing up for yourself. Now, showing up for others looks like this. Showing up for others is consistency. Being dependable, keeping your word, mentoring, listening. But when you have the space and energy, you can't be accessible 24 hours a day. Showing up for yourself looks like self-respect. And that means keeping promises to your body, to your goals, to your peace, even when no one's watching. You're not doing this shit for the gram. If you find you have too much solitude, that becomes detachment. If you find you're having too much contribution, that becomes depletion. So balance between the two is the guardrail that keeps both from breaking you. Now, what takeaways can you have from this discussion today? Let's talk about some simple, grounded practices, because everything I do, I don't just want it to be informative. I want to make sure that it's actionable. Number one, I mentioned this last podcast, reflect. Even if it's 5 minutes nightly. Ask yourself, am I resting or am I avoiding? So avoidance just numbs. Whatever you might use to avoid, if it's a numbness, it's incorrect. Rest restores. Write it down. I've said this before. Write one sentence about what you're avoiding, and then one small step you'll take tomorrow. Now, you're not writing it down to guilt yourself. When you write it down, you have control. The fear shrinks, and your plans can grow. Now, we're all busy as hell. It doesn't matter what time of year, we are busy. But you have to connect, at least once a week. Reach out to someone who builds, not drains. A training partner, mentor, one of your brothers, solid friend. You don't need heavy talk. You can do a check-in text. You can meet up for a drink, quick call. Consistency is how trust grows. So, consistently connect. And like I said, reps in the gym, we need to rest. But you have to rest in at least one protected block. What do I mean by that? I mean, schedule a block that isn't earned by exhaustion. I always thought I did not deserve rest until I was absolutely exhausted or I'd completed my entire task list. Now I try to treat it like a meeting with myself. If I need rest, I make sure I don't have my phone. I'm not multitasking. I'm letting my nervous system downshift. And if you have trouble with that, that's fine. If you can't do a whole hour or however long, set a timer, 20 minutes. 20 minutes of forcing yourself to learn this. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. Something else you can do for a takeaway is contribute. One act of service, and I say service because service gives you purpose. We talked about purpose a couple episodes ago. Purpose stabilizes your perspective. Call your parents, help a neighbor, teach a skill to someone. If you have the energy, check in on someone you know is struggling. So when you serve, your problems get sized correctly. My priest friend, he ended up passing away from cancer, but he always said this. If all of our problems were a rock, we threw them into a pile and pull out a random rock, you'd see what others are going through. When you pick up that rock that's not yours and you see a problem you couldn't even imagine, you would desperately want your original rock back. I'm not saying that we don't have severe problems sometimes, but we don't live in that every moment of every day. So unless you're going through something extremely severe, talk to somebody else. Do that act of service. Sometimes it puts your problems in a good perspective. I'm going to give you a final piece for a takeaway. Presence over productivity. So when that itch hits to do more, you need to pause and ask, would being fully here serve me better right now? So in other words, are you stretching yourself too thin? My God, that has been one of my biggest problems in life. Doing a million things at once, half present, because I'm stretched so thin. But then what I'm finding is if I'm present, I end up being able to move to the next one more effectively. So half the time, presence outperforms that idea of more motion. So that phrase, that presence over productivity, it sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things for men to live by. Now, most of us have been wired to measure our worth by output. If we're not doing something, fixing something, building something, we feel useless. That's me right now. That's me lately on this strike, and I'm trying to practice that idea of presence. Here's the truth. Presence is a form of production. It produces clarity, awareness, stability, all those things that prevent burnout. And if you've ever hit burnout, this conversation is for you. So when that itch hits, the one that tells you to keep pushing, to fill the quiet with noise, that's your nervous system trying to escape stillness. Pause and ask, would being fully here serve me better right now? Because sometimes the best thing you can do isn't one more task, one more email, one more grind session. It's actually noticing what's happening in front of you in the moment. So presence lets you respond instead of react. And I want you to keep those two terms in mind. Whenever you're feeling really worn down, I want you to ask yourself, am I responding or am I reacting? We want to be able to respond because it lets you connect with your environment, your breath, your body, the people around you. Let's work in some neuroscience terms because presence will move you from the sympathetic state we've talked about into the parasympathetic state, that rest, digest, recover. Now that switch is where you recharge your focus and your control. Psychologists refer to this as metacognitive awareness, the ability to step outside the rush and actually observe your thoughts before they own you. So when you do this consistently, you stop running on impulse, you stop reacting, and you start living by intention. So remember this: productivity builds progress. Presence builds direction. And without direction, all progress eventually runs in circles. So if you're tired, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been strong for too long. You've been strong for too long without pause. And independence doesn't mean isolation. Rest isn't a retreat, it's a preparation. So the goal isn't to do more. It's to be whole for what you're doing. I'll go out on this analogy because I just came off the bike. Even the strongest engines need to idle. Whether you're 103 twin cam or a 121 M8, you have to idle. You can't just get on and go. Thanks for listening today. Obrigado. That's it for today's episode of From Chaos to Code, Rebuilding the Iron Mind. If something in this hit you, take a second to sit with it before you scroll away. Write it down, apply it, share it with a brother who might need to hear it. The whole goal here isn't perfection, it's progress. Real men doing the real work of getting stronger, clearer, and more grounded every day. If you want to keep these conversations going, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen. And if you want to stay around after the episode, I'll be releasing tracks I've made using my own writing and AI music development. Each episode will feature a new track in a variety of genres that I use to express myself. Keep the chaos in check and keep the code alive. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening.
Controlado pelo meu coração, avanço sem rumo. Ele atrai-me a rostos que não posso abraçar. Há nomes que não pronuncio, olhos que evito guardar. Porque o amor para mim nunca foi algo que me fosse permitido reter. Estes sentimentos não me pertencem para mostrar, censurados pelo medo, amarrados a recordações de abandono. No meio da minha própria saudade, toquei no amor, apenas na beira, amor proibido, emoções proibidas. Tudo o que sinto vive por detrás das costelas trancadas. Deixo aqueles que amo para encontrar a minha alma, não porque queira, mas porque ficar destruiria o que resta de mim. Carrego o peso de cada despedida, como fogo debaixo da espada contra o meu peito, gravada na minha mão, para que nunca me esqueça daquilo do que tive de me afastar, para me sentir inteira outra vez. Por vezes acordo com uma dor no coração, mas a minha alma está vazia, ela já não me pertence. Não há regresso, apenas o eco daquilo que não viveu, onde não pude ficar. Não escolhi isto porque deixei de amar, escolhi porque ainda amo. Mas o amor que está sempre faminto não é um lar, e não podia continuar a arder só para aquecer outros. Deixo aqueles que amo para encontrar a minha alma. E agora vivo no silêncio que se segue ao sentido, não partida, mas aberta. Não persigo o que não chega, não imploro para ser vista. Já não represento o amor, estou a deixá-lo partir. E mesmo na liberdade continua a haver um cativo do coração. Deixo aqueles que amo para encontrar a minha alma, e agora vivo no silêncio que se segue ao sentido, não partida, mas aberta. Não persigo o que não chega, não imploro para ser vista. Já não represento o amor, estou a deixá-lo partir. E mesmo na liberdade continua a haver um cativo do coração.